As coaches, one of our chief aims is to help our clients evoke awareness. That is, to have some new ideas or new thoughts about the things that they're facing. And one of the best ways we can evoke awareness is through the use of metaphors, these word pictures or images or models that can really help a client unlock some new learning. So metaphors work because they take something that the client is facing now that maybe is unfamiliar and connecting it with something more familiar, or taking something that seems complicated and, connecting it to something more simple. So an example, had a client years ago who was a business owner, and the business had always gone well. It was always growing. It was always succeeding. It was always flying high until it wasn't. And then suddenly he was in this unfamiliar territory. Things suddenly seemed complicated and complex. I used a metaphor of an airline pilot. The movie Flight with Denzel Washington had come out, I don't know, maybe a year or two earlier. And I said, so if you were an airline pilot and the plane has taken a nosedive, what would you do? And, it's interesting because he wasn't an airline pilot, but, we all know enough about that kind of about flight that to kind of imagine what would we do. And he said, well, I would do what I could to keep it flying. I would try to, increase speed, increase lift, do what you can to keep it off the ground. And kind of reflected on a little bit. And eventually he had the awareness. He said, the worst thing a pilot could do is freak out. And I'm freaking out. And so the awareness that the metaphor evoked for him in that moment was, don't freak out, because when you freak out, all the things you know how to do suddenly aren't available to you. And so he applied that principle to his business. He lowered the freak out threshold for himself, and he began to really think and apply his creativity and his insight and his experience. All the things he had learned through the good times, he was now applying to the bad times. And what unlocked that for him was just a metaphor. And it could have been one of any number of metaphors. There's nothing magical about that particular one. So when we use metaphors with our clients, it's really a great way to serve them. And I think some reasons that it does is that it takes simple things and applies it to complex situations. It also kind of reduces the fear that people have, because unfamiliar things can create fear and concern. And so if you're wanting to use metaphors with your clients, use them, but use them strategically. A couple of pointers here. Listen to your clients to help kind of indicate what sorts of metaphors might connect with them. If your client is talking about golf, use some golf metaphors or other sports metaphors. If your client is into homemaking or cooking, you can use more relational or nurturing, those kind of metaphors. Maybe gardening. For whatever reason, with manufacturing people, I use a lot of car metaphors, talking about systems, because a car is a contained system, and it makes it easy for people to understand. With metaphors, you don't want to overdo it. So, if your client loves golf, she is still not going to benefit or appreciate every coaching session having a golf metaphor. You can also overdo it by turning a metaphor into an allegory. So not to have too many flashbacks to high school English, but in an allegory, every kind of piece of the picture represents something in reality. In a metaphor, the whole picture represents a whole picture in reality. So it's much more representative in the big picture, not in the specifics. So if you're using a golf metaphor, it's not that the driver represents something and a slice represents something and a hook and the green and putt, each of these pieces represents something in reality. No, it's more of a bigger picture, and that tends to work better in coaching to use metaphors, than allegories. And so just don't overdo it. Don't confuse them, but use them to evoke awareness. And then, of course, be sure to turn that awareness into action. When you do, your clients are going to benefit from your use of metaphors.
Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any of our great content.